we're on our final session, which is an international keynote on unifying disparate data sources. And we're joined by Dr. Satyam Priyadarshy, the Technology Fellow and Chief Data Scientist, Managing Director, India Center, Halliburton. Well recognized as one of the top 50 leaders in data and analytics in the US and Canada, Dr. Satyam is a veteran of the big data and data science and is often referred as the venture idealist who transformed businesses by leveraging big data, data science, and emerging technologies. Well, with this, it is now time to present on your screen Dr. Satyam Priyadarshy. Thank you so much, Dr. Satyam, for joining us today and being a part of the World Big Data and Analytics Show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Bhavna. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks to the TrustCon team. Namaskar to everyone, for those from India. Good afternoon, good evening. Especially also, I'm also the senior advisor to TrustCon as well, besides my role. And I'm very happy to be part of this World AI show and on data, as well as big data and analytics show. Thanks. Let me know. Let me know when my screen is visible, just to make sure that everything works fine.
Sure. Yes, Dr. Satyam,
All
your
right.
screen is visible. If you'd just like to switch on your camera again, because the video is off right now, in case if you'd like to switch it on.
Okay. That.
Yeah,
All right. Perfect.
yeah, thank you.
Perfect. All right. Thanks very much. Big data has been there for quite some time now. I think almost 15 years people have been talking about. And if you read the stories in the press and articles, that it will say you many of the big data projects don't work, they don't go to production, and various other things related to failure stories. One of the fundamental, I think, challenges that leads to it is what I call people really don't take advantage of unifying the disparate data sets, and that's when your big data projects don't yield value that it should really be yielding. So I thought I'll discuss some of those things, how it's to be done and why is it needed in this address. So before I actually start, I really need to thank a number of people who actually enable this uh, that I can actually speak. That's like after my parents, my primary school teacher, and my PhD advisor, and after that, my family and lots of co-workers over the last decade too, and all of you, those who are attending this talk. From a background perspective, as Bhavna said, I'm with Halliburton, as well as I'm also faculty at number of universities, both in India and US, and uh, and I come from a quantum mechanics background, and I've been turned into a technologist to a executive, and now having fun in energy sector. But most importantly, what's important here is that, if you look at where the world is, we live in what I called an era of compounded disruption, and that's really to be understood, because when it comes to what this disruption is, it's all about how we actually leverage the data. The first one is the digital maturity, and if you look at large industries, especially critical infrastructure industry, and if you had seen the recent cold wave in Texas and what happened to the energy supply, you can see the challenges associated with it. Um, but at the same time, as as energy transition landscape evolves, it's not about just energy industry which is going to be impacted. It is pretty much every industry, because it's more going to be a domino effect that impacts the other industries. And this disruption also comes in the form of the pace of emerging technology that's evolving. While that technology evolves, but its adoption is not matched. And one of my classic case study is that most of the large corporations have not even implemented effectively the search technology. And that is one of the reasons why a large amount of big data projects fail, because one of the foundational aspect of that technology could have been used to find the data. And the last one, which never people didn't see, is the pandemic. And if you can see how it's impacted in negative sense, but in terms of, I think for the technology people, it has provided some positive side of it, as that people have really come out of their shell and started adopting some of the emerging technologies more effectively and more efficiently than they would have done before the pandemic. So while it has large amount of negative thing associated with it, but there have been some awareness on how the technology can be involved. As I said, energy transition landscape will be the most critical of it. And if you look at the how the data would play out, it will pretty much look like as complex as this diagram landscape picture that is there. We won't know where we actually land up in this energy transition landscape, at what time of the year, what decade, things like that. But if you can actually put the data together, you will be able to see that how many uh, troughs or local minimas you might be stuck in for quite some time. And this is for every industry. And then of course oil and gas industry, since I work there, it certainly needs transformation. Since 2014 it has been really challenging for the oil and gas industry. uh, but irrespective of oil and gas, if you look at energy sector, wind energy, I think if you saw yesterday's story, or day before yesterday, uh, in South Africa, a whole wind farm was actually impacted by a fire. And this happens every time there is uh, severe weather changes. And all the modeling that has been done does not actually help to really look at some of these outlier events. And that same thing happened a couple of months ago in Texas with wind farms. So irrespective of industry, how we actually look at it, this adoption of industry 4.0 is needed, essential. And the maturity of adopting and being a player in industry 4.0 really requires the data unification across the enterprise and across the industry where possible, within the right governance framework and within the right regulatory framework. But if you look at it, why I say about industry 4.0 is very simple. I really look at this whole revolution of industry 4.0 as a disruptive growth area, because as the digital maturity increases, pretty much your economic value both at the enterprise level as well as the industry level will keep increasing. And but most of us are really stuck in this left hand bottom graph, trying to figure out some data driven innovation and solutions by limited data sets. In fact, in the big data world, we all know that everybody talks about who owns the data. And this is within an enterprise, forget about industry. There have been some efforts by some industry, healthcare, and now it's a little bit of oil and gas, where they are trying to put what are called data universes, open access, so to say, or open source data universes. But majority of the industries have challenges in terms of sharing the data even within their own enterprises. And if you have that restriction, you really can't innovate real solutions which will disrupt your own business. But it's needed, because industry we are while we most industry talks about industry 4.0, there are already discussions in terms of what industry 5.0 and industry 6.0 would look like in next few decades. Now, how does digital maturity comes into play is very simple. Like, people talk about digitalization and most of the focus is on digitalization, whereas what is needed is digital transformation. And how does that come about is can be actually described by the music industry. If you look at it, when you actually integrate data from different diverse sources, what happens is that you really transform an industry. So today, today's music industry, and some of younger generation probably won't even know about LP records. That was probably the first digitization aspect of this digital journey. And then came digitalization of the miniaturization of the players. And now today you have data from your mobile phone, data from artists around the world, web data, mobile data, whatnot. All different possible combinations of the data is being combined to provide you the best streaming service experience for the music. In fact, all you can connect to live as well as as well as historical, or second listening, things like that. So if you look at how it has changed, if you look at the graph of this growth of this industry, it's significant, because in the first part of digitization, you only had few actors and few singers and few music houses who provided services. With the streaming operations, you have millions of people actually employed in the industry, and actually generating thousands of times more value to the industry than what LP records had ever done. The people can talk about quality and things like that. That is actually uh, compared to the total economic value. I think streaming services have been significantly valuable to the economy as well, and to employment. So in some sense, digital transformation uh, is founded on integrating data sets and unifying them to create valuable products. And so I call that it's not a buzzword, or it's not digitization or digitalization. It's actually a change associated with the application of digital technology and solutions across the whole business life cycle, which actually makes it more competitive and resilient by developing new business models, because this is what is needed in this compounded disruption era. And there are only four foundation pillars of digital transformation, and that one of them uh, being the big data analytics as the pillar. The next one is integration of the emerging technologies, and then really trying to put everything in terms of real-time analytics, and then eventually leading to a as higher degree of automation, which essentially will lead to as more and more automation is done, we will be actually moving towards industry 5.0, and furthermore to industry 6.0, as machine to machine communication becomes bigger and bigger. And one can actually see that this in order to take advantage of these four pillars of digital transformation, one really needs to tame what I call the other exponential technologies as well, which is the fiber optic uh, pipelines for data, the industrial IoT sensors, the cloud computing paradigm, as well as the immersive reality. And when they come together is when actually you can maximize the value of the asset, as I call. That means the data asset. And that requires new kind of thinking. That means you require to build some platforms. And for example, there are various platforms that people have been talking about. I'll just give an example of from an oil and gas industry perspective. We build what is called an iEnergy platform, which is more like a ENP, or a oil and gas industries hybrid cloud solution. And this has been deployed over the last couple of years in 120 different places. And for example, it can be on the cloud, or it can be on an appliance, where you can actually really connect connect data sources, so that you can actually analyze the data. For example, just take this single platform can actually take advantage of connecting data from like significant, if you just don't worry about too many words here, but if you look at it, how many different vendors, how many different applications, and how many different users can work on a single platform, which helps to actually uh, really leverage the unification of the data to create value significantly, and provides the flexibility. And that actually leads to really creating exponential value in the system. And for example, you can actually measure your exponential value in terms of revenues or cost savings, accuracy or efficiency. And for especially bigger industries like ours, it actually can be measured in millions of dollars. And one of the other example that I can give you is that when you look really start unifying data from unstructured to operational data, which may be structured, you can actually generate significant economic value in terms of here. It shows an example for one of the Asian countries. Uh, for one of the smaller projects, so to say, the savings was in terms of $200 million per year when you actually mine this unstructured data, which is sitting in the middle of that ellipse in the left hand side, and use what one of the methodology that I developed is called the SMART methodology for actually integrating the data sets. When one does that, you can actually, I can guarantee you that by unifying that data, you can actually reduce the capital waste, the data waste, and time waste. Many of these things I spoke to you, I've written in quite some places, and some other people have also written about it, and some of this reference material here. And with that, I will actually stop speaking. Thanks very much for all your interest, and here is my contact information if somebody needs to connect with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Satyam. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you once again for joining us and being a part of this incredible forum today. Thank you once again, Dr. Satyam.
Thank you, Bhavna. How are you? Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Satyam Priyadarshy who spoke on this wonderful topic, which is unifying disparate data sources, and that was the international keynote.